Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast. I have this month's Patreon giveaway coming up later on, so if you're a Patreon subscriber, please definitely stay tuned because I want to make sure that you know if you've won or not. And also, I just wanted to give everybody a heads up that I'll be listing a ton of RGB monitors up for sale next week. I'm not really sure the best way to do it because, I don't want to go through eBay because I don't want to lose all that money. And I'm not really sure the best way to go about it. But the only thing I do know is, serious offers only, because a lot of people, I've gotten so many emails from people that say, hey, I hear you have extra RGB monitors. You want to sell it for $100? No. And then they get livid when I say no. So I'm sorry. You can't please everybody, I guess. But serious offers only, and I can't deal with shipping at all. Mostly 90% because of my back, but also because I can't afford the liability. So if you want me to bring it to a freight shipping place, I can't carry it down the flight of stairs. And if I carry a couple $1,000 monitor and drop it, I can't afford to lose all that now. So my buddy James has used U-Ship before, and that was awesome. They walked right into my apartment, picked up the arcade machine, brought it down, wrapped it up, insured it. It was delivered perfectly. Stuff like that, totally cool. Just I can't bring it anywhere, and I can't take care of it. You guys would have to. And of course, pickup would be the easiest, but I definitely got to be firm about that, just because there's just, absolutely, I can't blow my back out again. I'm just barely starting to heal now. So, and as for all the other stuff, I still have a few consoles left. Some are already up on eBay, and some are being finished up, and then whenever they're done, I'll list them. But the bulk of it is already up, so I would check out what I have up there now. I lowered the price on a bunch of stuff because a few of my friends reminded me that I might have accidentally been overcharging for one or two things. They didn't sell, the overcharged thing, or overpriced things didn't sell, so I didn't accidentally rip anybody off. But recheck everything again, and if you're interested in any of the consoles coming up from now on, just check out my eBay page every now and then and see what I got listed. And obviously a massive and huge thank you to everybody else who came down and bought a bunch of stuff. The good side of things was I was able to get a lot of stuff in people's hands that really needed them, which is very cool for everybody involved. And on the other side of things, I know a few of you didn't really need some of the stuff that you bought from me, but you kind of wanted it and wanted to help. Massive, gigantic thank you to all of you guys. If I could give you all one big, huge, drunken bear hug, I absolutely would. So thank you guys for everything, and the last of the stuff should be up for sale next week-ish. And just, let me know if you're interested, and I'll try to figure out the best way to do it. And I don't really know what's going to happen if, 20 people all want the same thing. Should I do, an auction thing? I don't know, but any suggestions you guys have, please let me know, because I just want to do it fairly. I don't want to rip anybody off, and no offense, but I also don't want to lose a ton of money. So I'm all ears as always, and let's jump right into the news. First up, it looks like Super Mario Bros. Cereal is coming out, which is kind of funny because when I was a little kid, I used to eat Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cereal, and I would drink Ecto Cooler out of those big gigantic cans where you'd have to use the hole punch, one on each side. 80s kids will know what I'm talking about. Everybody else is just probably staring at the screen right now, but it's probably going to taste like shit, but hey, whatever. At least it's fun. Next, E.C. Myers just tore apart a few of the Hyperkin NES controllers and found similar results to what I did a while back, in that some play perfectly, and in fact the Hyperkin NES controller I've been using is my main NES controller now, but others do have issues, just like the first one I found. So if you're interested, read the article, and I hope there's definitely a way we could figure out which one's which, because I genuinely like some of the ones that I've been using, and I'm really looking forward to trying the SNES one a lot more. So far so good, but I need to clock a lot more hours to be able to really see. Next, it looks like there's going to be an X-Files mobile game released in February that's corresponding with the new season of the show, which, although of course this isn't retro gaming news, anybody that's seen the poster in my office behind me when I do any video from the office knows that I'm a huge fan, and hopefully some other of you nerds are as well. And now we could go hopefully enjoy the next season of X-Files and a mobile game. Version 2.1 of Lakka is now released as a stable official build for pretty much every device, Raspberry Pi, regular computers, and everything else it supports, which is great because this is currently my favorite software to use with Raspberry Pi arcade stuff. The only thing that I really would wish that any of these had are official support for things like thumbnails or video playback, because that was one of the things that that really struck everybody about that arcade machine that I had in my apartment, because I had just built some custom software one, but every time that you go through and select a game, as you're scrolling through, it gives you a video preview of what the game is like. And I think a lot of people really enjoy that, both because it looks cool, but also for people who are kind of scrolling through trying to figure out what game they want to play, or maybe a new game they haven't really tried yet. So hopefully somebody would be able to help with this. A few weeks ago, somebody actually posted in the comments that they had a skin like that for, I think, a different, it wasn't Lakka, I'm trying to remember, the Recall Box, I believe. But if anybody has any more info on that, please let me know, because I think it would be a really awesome addition to Raspberry Pi gaming. There's now a new way to install custom firmware on some PS3s, and it's a little bit complicated. So first, it has to be a PS3 that at one point was released with the original firmware that was hacked, which is not possible with things like the Super Slim. And then it's a kind of a complicated, not for beginners, maybe even not for intermediate process to go through, but it is one more step towards the goal of supposedly next year there's going to be one new hack for all PS3s. But if you're into that stuff, definitely check it out. I think at the moment, though, the safest bet for your average person is to send it to a downgrading service and then install the custom firmware yourself. And speaking of PS3s, Voultar just posted a video on how to replace some of the bad chips if anything gets corrupt on your PS3. And while it's a pretty cool tutorial, it's also great solder porn for anybody that's into that stuff. It's just, it's a really great way to learn different techniques to solder to small points. And it's stuff like that that really helps me tremendously, because a lot of the videos I see online are either too basic or too advanced, and I like the Goldilocks zone of tutorials. I like stuff that I can understand, that even if it's out of my skill level, it's at least a reachable goal. So I hope he keeps spitting these out, and let's keep subscribing, so maybe we can get him to that 3,000 mark and get him to mod something stupid. Marcus just posted an update to his digital CPS2 board. That's the HDMI kit that's pretty much zero lag for those CPS2 arcade boards. And he said he originally intended to design the new PCB revision last month, but he started to look to see if the board could be made to support CPS3 and possibly original CPS boards, which would be pretty awesome. So, you know, huge thanks to him for all the crazy and great stuff that he invents and brings out to the community. And I'm definitely going to be checking this out as soon as I could do a review on one. It looks like some Sega Saturn fans have brought back the Saturn Netzone. At least the guest book and the leaderboards are currently back online, which is pretty killer that people would resurrect something like that and keep it going. So, you know, big shout out to my fellow nerds who love this stuff as much as I do and would take the time to do that. That's really cool. Smoke Monster just posted a video on how to patch MSU1 audio games for use on the SD to SNES, or I guess even on emulators or something. But very helpful tutorial for people that were kind of confused and couldn't really find the correct way to do it. So thanks to Smoke Monster, and hopefully we'll see more of these from him. It looks like the Retrofreak console is using unlicensed code for one of its emulators. It looks like it's using the SNES 90X Next 2010 code, which I guess is non-commercial code. And this is something that we've seen in the past before. And I mean, stuff like this really, really rubs me the wrong way. The community, the retro gaming community, or gaming community in general, is usually really great and helpful, and especially with things like a console that allows people to play their games using software emulators, but with original games. And a lot of people are willing to help, so the fact that they would just use unlicensed code kind of sucks. But I guess there's proof that it happened, so if anybody's interested in that or just wants to read something and get angry, check out the link. It looks like Mega Man 11 is going to be released probably this time next year on the Switch, the PS4, the Xbox One, and PC. So, as always, I curbed my expectations for something like this. I was really thrilled at Mighty No. 9. Then it was delayed for like a million years, and it wasn't that great when it came out. In fact, I just saw one in a game store, a hard copy of it for $7. So obviously it's not a good seller at all. But hopefully this will be different, and hopefully people will realize how much we as gamers, not just retro gamers, really loved all of the great Mega Man games. And hopefully this one will be another one to remember. Someone emailed in this next tip, and hopefully I'll get it right because it looks really cool. It looks like Madrigal's Simulators is a website that just released simulators or detailed emulators for all 59 Game & Watch games that were released. And apparently they're for Windows, for RetroArch or LibRetro, or even for MAME, I think. And not only is it an emulation of the Game & Watch game, but there's the full skins on there too, so you could really try to get closer of an experience. And that's really neat. And while I never got super into the Game & Watch stuff, Cousin Scott loves these things, and he's got a pile of them, and he's always trying to show me the different cooler ones, and I love the ones that are unique and different. There are some just generic ones out there, but it's definitely a whole other type of thing that, unless you've actually played on one, it is a unique experience in itself, and stuff like this is definitely going to help keep it alive. It looks like certain games from the Wii and GameCube are being released on the NVIDIA Shield in China, which is kind of interesting because the Switch is essentially an NVIDIA Shield. So that means they're in games like Twilight Princess or the new Super Mario Bros. Wii, which I actually loved, in 1080p. So hopefully that means we're going to all get the same thing coming soon. I just put up a review about Hyperkin's Super Nintendo HDMI clone that they just released, which actually isn't coming out for another week or so. So huge thanks to Chris at Hyperkin for giving the little guy a chance and not just sending it to the big guys who are going to get millions of views here. So huge thank you for supporting the little guys. But the bad news is it's not really the greatest console. It's essentially just their basic SNES clone, but with an HDMI scaler on it that processes the signal as 480i. So the good side is it's $70, and overall it performs way better than a Super Nintendo through that generic SCART to HDMI converter, because those things have 5+ frames of lag, and sometimes they don't really work at all. Whereas this one has about 3 frames of lag and looks pretty much the same. So it's a good solution for people that want to play original PAL and NTSC carts but don't want to have to region mod or buy multiple consoles, or really for people that are just getting started into this and just say, hey, I already have a pile of SNES games. What's the best way to play it on my TV? I'm not sure if I'm into this or not. I mean, it seems like a perfect start because your next best option is going to cost a lot of money, and there's always a bunch of ifs or ands that go with it. So there's definitely a place for this. I just, Hyperkin isn't like some billion-dollar corporation, but they are a company, and they have the opportunity to make things that could make a difference that people would really enjoy. So it would be my preference for a company like that to do low and middle, not just like something in between. Just to have some cheap clone console for a couple of bucks that's maybe just component video only or something or whatever. That's totally fine. And then do something that's a little bit better. At the very least, process things in progressive, not as 480i, or try to get something with low lag. If it was a zero lag solution, but still processed it as 480i to 720p, I would totally give it a pass, because at that point, it doesn't look great, but who cares? You could still have a real experience. So hopefully Hyperkin will listen and learn, but the bottom line is they're not selling to us. They're selling it to game stores that, when somebody walks in off the street and says, hey, I love Super Nintendo, how do I play that on my TV? If a game store has to sit down and go, okay, well, follow these steps and invest anywhere from $200 to $2,000, people are going to turn around and walk right out the door. So at the very least, something like this is just a first start. Just, here you go. Here's your first step. If you really like it, come back. I'll show you the second step. Just like, which is fair. It's just like anything else in life. If somebody tells you, like, hey, I really love cars, what could I buy to tinker? Then nobody's going to say, go buy a Lamborghini. They're going to say, here's some cool choices of stuff. Start and go from there. So I really hope they take this opportunity for whatever they do next to really just go a step further and really understand that there is a market out for people that would absolutely pay for quality and would genuinely understand the difference. Because the one thing I actually did find that kind of surprised me is a lot of my non-nerd friends that really, I mean, they not only do they not know what 480i is, they do not give a shit. When they sit down and play stuff like this, they notice immediately, which really surprised me. You know, I can't tell you how many people I've had over that said, like, hey, how come when I press the button on your TV, Mario jumps right up, but on my TV it feels like it takes a while? Like, stuff like that. People genuinely notice, and all it just takes is somebody to point out the differences. So I hope you're listening, Hyperkin, and thank you very much to Chris for once again, just for, you know, letting a little guy have a chance with this. And before I get to the Patreon giveaway, I wanted to talk about something that Marcus, the same person that did the OSSC and the CPS2 digital mod, he had posted on Shmups a few weeks ago, but I didn't quite grasp what it was. Like, I kind of had a decent idea, but I don't think I was able to really explain it. So I do like I always do in situations like that, and incessantly nag all of my friends who are smarter than me. This time, Steve from HD Retrovision got back first, so I'm just going to read his response, and hopefully this will make sense to you guys. If not, stick with it, and I'll try to quickly summarize in layman's terms at the end. But basically, Marcus made a post on Shmups regarding the research he's done on the weird incompatibilities NES and SNES have on modern TVs. It's a complicated subject with lots of technical jargon, but to dumb it down for Bob, basically video signals need to be presented as a constant rhythm, like a metronome, with as little variation around the beat as possible. Horizontal sync signals control when each line is drawn, and a constant sync signal means each line is equal in length. On the NES and SNES, there's a single line that occurs every 2 frames, which is slightly shorter than all the other lines. So there's a hiccup in this tight rhythm when that specific line is drawn. The hiccup is very small, just under 200 nanoseconds, and historically with CRTs, this was not enough to throw off any analog circuitry. In modern equipment, the digital circuitry needs to lock onto this sync signal before determining if the video signal is valid and should be processed by the display at all. Depending on how much tolerance the locking mechanism has, the feedback loop for this locking circuit may never acquire a lock or periodically lose lock when it encounters this hiccup. TVs with this compatibility issue on NES and SNES are having trouble with this. So he's been working on a way to intercept the signal and then have a fixed up external signal to this, so that way what's displayed to the TV is always that exact same length. So that explains basically why some of the SNES through OSSC aren't compatible with TVs when Genesis and PlayStation are. To dumb it down big time, it basically means that the SNES and NES sync is a little weird, and Marcus is trying to find a way to replace something in there or add something to it to make it less weird, thereby more compatible. So as always, a massive thanks to Steve from HD Retrovision for jumping in. And I'm really sorry about all that noise in the background, but this is what I got to deal with living in New York City. It's 9 o'clock at night, and there's construction going on, and people screaming, and things getting slammed. So, sorry guys. Okay, now it's time for my favorite time of the month, where I get to give back to the people that have been supporting the channel and everything else that I am always so amazingly appreciative to. So here is the Patreon giveaway, and this time it was donated by Jeremy from Forgotten Freshness. I met him a few times at trade shows. It's a good dude. He makes these. And I think he sells them through Forgotten Freshness. I could be wrong about that, but either way, good store, great game store. Check out their Twitter and their, if you live in the area, their store. But this is a backlit Game Boy Advance. So this is one with an actual AGS screen inside a regular Game Boy Advance. Brand new screen, and I believe this is a glass screen as well, which when I first heard about that, I didn't really know how much of a difference it actually made, but it makes a big difference. So it's got a clear case, and I didn't want to just ship something basically just console only. So I picked up one of these because it was cheap and I couldn't help myself. Here is one of the Game Boy Advance carrying cases, but I never realized that it came with like a shoulder strap. So here you go. obviously a massive thank you to Jeremy. Thank you to everybody who's ever donated anything to the Patreon giveaways, because it's such a tremendous help for me. I get to give something really cool back to you guys. So let's see who won this, and I will be able to ship it off with a shoulder strap, so you could be completely fashionable playing your newly donated Game Boy Advance. You know, keep it close to your heart. Okay, so the winner of the backlit Game Boy Advance Yaniv. Well, congratulations, Yaniv. I'm gonna make sure to look up your account and email you about this. Hopefully there's not more than one Yaniv. But yeah, congratulations. These things are pretty awesome, and I hope you get to enjoy it. Now on to the Q&As. I actually had a bunch of questions already regarding that Hyperkin Supa HD thing, but I reached out to Chris Galizzi to ask a few questions and make sure that I have the correct answers, so I'll just make sure to report back next week with any answers related to that video. Next, Cameron McCown asked if there's any word on that Dance 3DO RGB mod. Video's coming. It's going to be a little while, but I have the right people on it. Let's just put it that way. And Steve Gordon replied and said that he actually ordered a modded 3DO from Dance, and the picture quality is great. It only just suffers from the same RGB alignment issue as the older one, the older Otaku board, but the 240p RGB output looks great. I believe the alignment issue is because of the way they used a sync stripper, but I'll just wait till the other video to go into details with that. And hopefully there'll be more 3DO mods available. I know that Dan mentioned that one of the ideas he had didn't work out exactly the way he'd hoped, but you know, it might not be the world's greatest console, but we still want the best quality out of it, so I'll keep everybody updated. Next, johnpv asked, has there been any updates on people other than Yerky offering Colecovision RGB mods? And the short answer is no, not that I know of, but there's going to be a little more involved in that. So anytime you RGB mod a ColecoVision, you can't just put a board in, you actually have to tweak it to each console. You might be able to get it down to specific model revisions, but generally speaking, the right way to do it would be to include a board that has potentiometers instead of resistors on the RGBS lines, and then use an oscilloscope to test each individual one to dial in the correct voltage and levels. Which is a little crazy because while there is always a wide swing of tolerances on all consoles, both because many of the components they use are 20% tolerance, and even some of the chips themselves have tolerances in them, there's enough of a swing in different Coleco models that you would actually need a scope to dial it in. So if somebody does ever sell their own do-it-yourself kit, it would be my suggestion that they pretty much take the stance of, like, no returns, do this at your own risk. Because if you don't have a scope and you dial it in by hand, just kind of by looking at it, which I did once just to see, just for the hell of it to see, and I did it on the right equipment knowing I wouldn't damage anything. You know, it can be done, but there's a chance you could change the levels where it might actually damage some of your more sensitive equipment that you're outputting to. So I don't think it's going to be something that we see, and if it is, it really will be do at your own risk, you know, expert only type of thing. But one thing to note is the Analog NT Mini does have a ColecoVision core that I thought was awesome. The only thing I was really disappointed is I thought Kevtris was by now going to have the controller adapters out. Because while I really would actually like to use some of my original Coleco cartridges on it, which I know it's dumb, it's the same thing as the ROM, but while that would be nice, playing any game on a controller that wasn't designed with that system very often completely changes the experience. Sometimes for the better, but yeah, so that is definitely a good option if you're looking to do RGB or HDMI Coleco right away. Well, that's pretty much it for this week. Before I go, I just want to remind everybody that I reposted the interview with a video game attorney last week, and that's something that I'm going to continue to do every week that I don't have an interview, both because it gives maybe newcomers more content to listen to that, you know, maybe they joined or subscribed after. And I also want to really showcase some of the interviews I did that I thought were awesome, that really deserve their own separate video. So definitely show some love to those guys. It was a great interview anyway, and I got a fun one coming next week. So everybody, next week, probably tomorrow actually, sorry, for this week's interview. Grab your beers and get ready, because this one's going to be a little bit out there. But obviously a massive and huge thank you to Jeremy for donating the GBA. Congrats to Yaniv for winning. Thank you so much for your support. And just a tip for Patreons, you might want to put first and last name just in case there's two people of the same first name. And I will keep everybody posted on what's going to happen with the RGB monitor sale. I imagine it's going to go really quick, because stuff like that usually does. And once again, any suggestions on how I could do that fairly so everybody gets a chance. I will go through eBay if I have to, but the cut that they take is ridiculous. I'd rather just find any other way to sell than eBay for something like that. But anyway, as always, any comments or criticism, please post down below. I love hearing from you guys, and I'll see you next week.